Hi guys, it is Aoife from Fred Weasley Died Laughing, and I'm here with another weekly wrap up. I got so many books to read this week. I had a really good reading week, which makes me really happy, and I'm going to tell you about all the books that I read now. So the first book I finished this week was Hero of the Fall by Alwyn Hamilton. This is the third and final book in the Rebel of the Sands trilogy, which I really loved, and this I think was just a really great conclusion to the entire trilogy. I really love this trilogy. I loved Rebel of the Sands. Trader of the Throne, which is the second book, is still my favourite one, which I think is odd because second books tend to have that second book syndrome, where for this one I just really loved everything that was happening in Trader of the Throne. Hero at the Fall, a bit longer. It's like almost 500 pages I think. Yeah, just about 500 pages, so it seemed a little bit lengthy at times, but there was a lot going on in it. There was a lot that needed to be done before the big final epic battle. There were some rescue missions that were always a lot of fun to read. I really liked the character development of Amani throughout this series. We really saw her from the first book grow and learn about herself and learn about her abilities, and I just really love the magic in this. I love the Demji, which are kind of the children of these kind of magical gods and mortal women, and they're called the Demji, and they all have these amazing magical abilities, and I just love that. That is just like what I love to read about, and it's no exception in this trilogy. I really love how the Demji were brought to life, and I love the fact that this is set in a Middle Eastern type environment, and that we have people who are really diverse. Though this isn't own voices, I do think I do really like just seeing the different types of people that are represented in this book, though I obviously can't say if they are represented really well, but I do enjoy that representation on the page anyway. I do think the very end of this book kind of like the epilogue, it seemed really long. I think it was too long, and I think it went into just too much detail about everything that had happened afterwards. I mean, if there really was that much plans for like after everything, I feel like there could have been like a little set of novellas or like a carry-on series or something like that. So it just seemed to go on a little bit for me, but I still did really enjoy this book, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was The Water Cure by Sophia Mackintosh, and this was I think longlisted for the Man Booker Prize this year, and was one of the very few on the long list that I was actually interested in reading, because after last year and after pretty much enjoying none of the books I read from the long list, I decided I wasn't going to push myself into reading the long list anymore. So this is the only one that I really was pushed to read, and I didn't seek it out, I just happened to see it in the library, so I picked it up. And this is set in this kind of strange world where it seems that there's a lot of, I think, radiation or something in the world, and we're following these 3 sisters, Grace, Leah and Skye, and the start of the book, it seems that their father has died, and they're living on this, it almost seems like an island or like a really secluded house with their mother, and they're going through all these, they're put through all these like exercises to help them survive in the world, and they're told that like men are evil, men are dangerous, and men can make you sick, and honestly like it's very hard to know what is actually the truth about this world and what it is that they've just been told by their parents, and it certainly seems that maybe there is some radiation out there, and the environment is not good, but then it seems that the environment around their house is good, and it's really kind of like confusing. But we're following these 3 sisters, and eventually these 3 men are washed ashore, and they end up kind of taking them in, and we're seeing the relationships and the kind of obsession a couple of the sisters, particularly one of them, has with these men, and just how things get really dangerous, and really dangerous really fast basically. This is kind of one that I feel like if you do have like a background in being able to dissect literary fiction, I guess you could get like a lot of meaning from this book, and a lot of like, there's probably a lot of hidden messages underneath it. For me, I read it and I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. I thought it was a little bit weird at times. I mean, there's very much to like little to no world building because we are just stuck on this little island, but I did have a nice picture of like what that house and what that island must have looked like. I did find the different sisters, Grace and Leah were the ones we particularly were getting a point of view from, and I just found their voices quite I found them quite interesting. I liked the fact that they were so different. We were getting like different versions of stories from them. We were getting 2 different sides. We're starting to realise things aren't all as they seem, and things are a little bit more sinister. yeah, there are some parts of it that are quite uncomfortable to read as well. But I did enjoy it, but I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars just because like it wasn't something I loved. But I do think that if people are really into literary fiction and read a lot of it, they would probably get a lot more out of this than I did. The next book I finished was Tarnished City by Vic James. This is the second book in the Equals trilogy. I actually am not sure what this is called. The first book was called Gilded Cage, which I read last year and really enjoyed. And the best way I can actually describe what this trilogy is about is imagine what the world would have been like in Harry Potter if Voldemort had won and all the muggles were basically made slaves. This is kind of what this is like. This is kind of like a Death Eater world. So in this is like a alternate UK where there are people in the world that are born with magic, and there are these families that are all magical, and they are called Equals, and they kind of basically rule everything. And people who are born without magical abilities, they have to do 10 years of what's called slave years, and they can choose to do them whenever they want, but most people will choose to do them young. Some people will choose to have families, and the whole family have to go to these kind of slave towns to do this. And we are following one family who end up being able to do their slave years in working in the estate of one of the most powerful equal families. And in the first book we're following them as they go and do that and start learning more about the equal families, start kind of gaining some relationships with them, seeing that not all of them are as bad as they seem. But then the brother of the family, he wasn't allowed for some reason to go to the estate. He had to go to one of the slave towns and one of the slave factories to work. And he ended up getting involved in kind of a rebellion, a revolutionary gang to try and break out of that. And the end of the first book, we saw a lot of different things happen, and this book follows basically straight on from that, and we are seeing what is happening to all the different members of the family, how the revolution is continuing, how the rebellion is continuing. I don't know whether I could call it a rebellion or a revolution. I guess a revolution. And yeah, I just really loved this. I loved seeing the different, I love just the characters who, this is the kind of book where you feel like some characters are going to be good and some characters are going to be bad, but then the characters you presume are going to be bad end up kind of being good in a way, and they can just like turn around and completely surprise you. And I love that about these characters. And there are some characters that are like super grey, and like you genuinely never know what side they are going to fall on, and you were just waiting for that to happen. This is a really like fast-paced read, I think, and yeah, I just love the kind of the magical system. I love the magical world. I love the fact that it is this kind of dark Death Eater type world, and we really getting a glimpse of what it could have been for like Harry Potter. But yeah, I did really enjoy this. The writing, as I said, is fast-paced, it's quick, it's very easy to read. The story is very easy to read, and to be fair, I actually could not remember anything that happened in the first book when I first started reading this, and I was kind of concerned. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get into this really quickly. I might struggle a lot, but yet within like 2 chapters everything came flooding back to me, and I ended up remembering pretty much everything that had happened. There are some really like heart-stopping moments in this book and really tragic moments that I was not expecting at all, so I really love the fact that I was taken by surprise too. And I loved the end of it. The end was quite horrifying but exciting, and it did end on a little bit of a cliffhanger, so I'm very excited to continue on and read the third book. I gave this like a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was a thriller. It's Forget Me Not by A.M. Taylor. This is one I got off NetGalley. This book is about a girl called Maddie who, when she was 17, her best friend Nora went missing and was never found again. And now 10 years later she's back in her town for the 10th anniversary or remembrance of Nora's disappearance. And the next day, like the proper day of Nora's 10th anniversary, Nora's younger sister, who's also 17 now, is found killed in the exact same spot that Nora was presumed to have last been. So Maddie ends up getting into this kind of investigation. She starts kind of like puts herself into the thick of it and trying to figure out what happened to Noelle, what happened to Nora. This book was one that I thought was going to be really good, and I was really excited to read it, and it ended up honestly just being a complete letdown. The majority of the story was actually extremely boring. We weren't really finding out that much. I thought it was kind of weird how much Maddie put herself into the investigation of Noelle, and not only that, but how much she put herself into the centre of the grief around both Nora and Noelle. I mean, she was Nora's best friend, but she also like was in a group of best friends. So there was like Nora, there was another girl called Ange, and then there was another girl called Hale, and the 4 of them are kind of best friends together. But it kind of seemed like Maddie was always taking the monopoly of grief, and you know, I just kind of thought it was weird. And like, I know everyone kind of grieves in different ways, but the fact that Maddie had kind of let this event that was like just happened to her best friend, she wasn't like family, she wasn't like, you know, she wasn't the only person to have been friends with Nora, and the way she let that event kind of destroy the rest of her life, like for 10 years she'd just been a complete mess. I just thought it was kind of strange, and I was just a bit like, well, if I was Nora's family and I saw how much of the grief you had monopolised, I would kind of be a little bit like annoyed, because they know she wasn't your sister, she was just your friend, she wasn't your family, and while obviously it would affect you, how is it affecting you that much? I don't know, there was just a bit, there was just something about it that just kind of like irritated me a little bit, and I kind of felt like if I was family I would have been irritated at her. I also feel like there was just kind of some weird things with the writing style. I don't know whether this is because maybe this is a debut novel, but like, I mean, Maddie lived in a place called Madison, Madison, that was weird, and I think that was just a little bit like, I don't know. And then the kids in the family of Nora, they were called Nora, Noel, Nate and Noah, so they were all N names. And then there seemed to be a point where it seemed that was going to be like a thing around Noel's death and Nora's disappearance, this like the N names and the names of the siblings, and then it didn't, it actually ended up like leading nowhere. So yeah, I just kind of was like, really, they all had to have N names, like really. And yeah, there was just so much in this that was quite sloppy. I actually figured out who the killer was in like the first chapter. I figured, yeah, so I was just like, there was just so many like clues, and so I wasn't surprised at all at the end. Yeah, so I gave this like, and then there's also one thing that I'm going to make a complete video discussion about this, because it's something that happened in this book, it's happened in other books, and it's really annoyed me, and it is basically bad journalism in books, and sensational journalism in books, particularly thrillers, when the journalism and articles surrounding deaths and surrounding crimes and stuff are basically on the page to be distrustful and to be, you know, show bad side of the media, and I just think it's quite dangerous at times, especially in this kind of era where we're living in the world of like fake news and bad media and stuff. So I do want to do a whole discussion on that, which I will. I don't want to talk about it too much in this video, but there was that thing in this book where the only like articles that were being like put on the page or were being read by Maddie were bad articles, sensationalist articles, very biased articles, and it just annoyed me. As a journalist, it annoyed me, and I keep seeing it, and yeah, I just want to talk about it more, so that will be coming up in the next week or so. So yeah, I gave this like a 2.53 stars, probably 2.5 stars to be honest. And yeah, and then the next book I have almost finished, I literally have 100 pages left, is Renegades by Marissa Meyer. This is a really cool world where superheroes and villains are basically, you know, fighting against each other, and it seems that like the villains, who are called the anarchists, have basically been destroyed. It's been about 10 years since the anarchist leader was killed, and we are following a girl who is related to that anarchist leader, and she is ready to get revenge on the Renegades, the superheroes, who she believes aren't as superhero as everyone thinks they are, and she thinks they're a little bit corrupt, and she ends up going undercover as a renegade to try and bring them down from the inside. And so far it's been really, really good. I've really enjoyed it. I love how meaty this book is. I love how much detail there's in it. I love the slightly will they, won't they romance that is going on in it, and yeah, I just love this kind of story, and I'm really, really enjoying it, and I say this is going to be a 4 to a 5 stars for me. So I only have 100 pages left, so right now it's at like a 4.5, and I'll see how it ends. It could end up being a 5 out of 5 stars, I don't know yet, but I'm really, really, really enjoying it. So that's everything I have read and what I'm currently reading this week. Please let me know what you guys think below and what you guys are reading. I would love to know, and I'll see you guys again next time.